Oh, hello, YouTube. I am back again with episode 2 of season 2 of Interview with the Vampire. And a lot of really cool stuff happens this episode. We finally get into the Théâtre des Vampires, which is, kind of a big deal in the books. It comes up a lot. So I had a ball watching this episode. So let's get into what actually happened and any book Easter eggs you may have missed. Let's start off in the present. Our interview is going on right now. And Armand is now a co-narrator. And a lot of the interactions here are just Armand and Louis being an old married couple, essentially. They also make a big point of saying they've been together for 77 years, and Armand is like, oh, but that's 47 more years than you were with Lestat. Armand is just kind of being real smug about that fact. And it makes sense, the time frames are different in the book and the show, but Armand, hated Lestat's guts for a very long time, including this part of his life when he was Louis' companion. He still hated Lestat a lot. It took a very long time for them to be kind of friends. Yeah, they have a very tempestuous relationship. So him being like, well, I've been with him longer than you, Lestat, just seems right up Armand's alley. However, there's also an underlying kind of sinister tone to their interactions, because they're telling a lot of the story as if it's like a rom-com meet-cute kind of situation. And Daniel, very rightly, is like, oh my god, you guys are full of shit. This is a telenovela. What are you doing? Daniel picks up on all of the lies he's being told very easily, far better than Louis does, and Daniel didn't even live this. So it's wild to see an outside perspective going, oh my god, you guys are ridiculous. But if you look past the whole sinister overtone of their relationship, they're actually really cute together. They finish each other's sentences. They have all these inside jokes and stuff. So, I don't know, I'm torn. Because sometimes they're cute, but I know it's evil. So it's like, I don't know what to do. But anyway, more on that later. Let's get into what was happening in the past. So it's post-war Paris. Claudia and Louis have moved in. Then they're just making their way as best they can. Louis, he took up photography as a hobby. Claudia is picking pockets so, they can pay their rent. Louis is not really helping all that much, which isn't necessarily book accurate, because in the book, Louis had money. They didn't need to go pick pockets, but either way, they just kind of settled into Paris and they have this little apartment they live in. That's kind of the whole vibe. However, Louis and Claudia don't know there is actually a local coven of vampires in town. And the Coven of Vampires has found them, and they're like, why aren't they coming to say hi to us? This is super rude. They're so gauche. Ew, Americans. And this goes on for 5 months. But during this time, Louis and Claudia, their relationship with each other is changing quite a bit, because they're staying together for different reasons. Louis, he loves Claudia. She's his replacement sister. She's what connects him to humanity. Surprisingly, even though she's a vicious vampire. But anyway, loving Claudia like a sister makes him feel more human. And Claudia has been staying with Louis because he's the only other vampire she knows. So she's kind of stuck with him. Because even in the past, she knows that Louis is full of shit. Everybody knows Louis is full of shit. Louis tends to define himself through other people, and he doesn't ever spend a lot of time figuring out who he is on his own. And Louis just spends all of his time thinking of himself as, a reticent vampire. Denial thy name is Louis. I feel like that's the theme of the season. Denial thy name is Louis. And Claudia has obviously picked up on this. She's known him for years. She knows he's full of shit and he's in denial. And she wants him to get a fucking life outside of her, because she wants a life outside of him, and she doesn't want to feel guilty about leaving him. It's a whole thing. Because Claudia is growing and changing, whereas Louis keeps staying the same. Claudia, she is in a child's body, but she does want to dress and act like her age, She's 40. I mean, at least in the show, Claudia is supposed to be 12, 13 years old, so very young. However, in the book, Claudia's 5. She's barely not a toddler. So having an even tinier adult woman is even a more jarring image here. But anyway, one night she goes over to this little dress shop she finds because she sees this beautiful silk dress in the window. And inside the shop is like this lonely woman dressmaker, and they don't ever say her name, but I'm thinking this is going to end up being Madeline. So without too many spoilers, in the book, Madeline is a human woman. She's a doll maker, not a seamstress. And she lost her daughter, so she's very sad. And then Claudia comes around, and Claudia's like an undying child, kind of match made in heaven here. So that's what I think is gonna happen, because they never say this lady's name, but I'm pretty sure it's Madeline. Meanwhile, all that's happening, Louis, he's been going to the park at night to go cruising, pick up some men. And one night, Louis happens to meet a very handsome stranger. Guess who it is, everybody? It's Armand. And Armand has this very hypnotic quality to him where you're just like drawn in because you're like, whoa, you're so pretty. And that's very, very book accurate. And Armand is also taken with Louis, and he's like, you should come to one of the shows. And he gives him a card, and it's for the Théâtre des Vampires. And he's like, come hang out with us, which is kind of book accurate. Like, Armand does meet Louis, but actually Louis meets Santiago first, and they're like in a street fight, and Armand comes and breaks it up and invites him. So it's a little different of a meet cute in the book. But anyway, let's get back into this, because you haven't even met Santiago yet. So Louis, he is so excited. He goes running back to the apartment, and he's like, Claudia, guess what? Guess what? I found more vampires. Oh my gosh, and they're not zombies. They're both very excited about this because they haven't met like any cool vampires this whole time they've been in Europe. So the next night they go to the theater to see one of the shows. And I love how the Théâtre des Vampires is portrayed in the show. It's actually really book similar. So the vampire show is basically a lot of little small skits. They use like film projectors, and the actors interact with the projected images, which is so cool. I always wanted to see that, because in like the book they used more shadow and light to create these kind of things. And the addition of film to the play kind of makes it a Rocky Horror Picture Show type of deal, where like there's actors on stage, but it's also a movie, and like people in the audience dress up and they like yell lines back to them and stuff. It's very Rocky Horror. And I kind of love it. So our main character in this play is Santiago, and oh boy, is this actor just chewing the scenery. Just so big, so avant-garde, and I like love him. He's hypnotic, he's captivating, he's this perfect Santiago. And then finally you get to the main event of the show, the Death Takes a Bride section. Much of the monologue Santiago gives is directly right out of the book, line for line. So very book accurate here. Basically, there's a young woman on stage, and she is not an actress. She is a young human woman, and she is scared to death. And Santiago basically is toying with her, and he ends up kind of thralling her into this sense of relaxation. And then he and the performers proceed to drain her in front of the entire audience. And Claudia is just enraptured by the performance. Oh my gosh, these are vampires proud of being vampires and doing vampire shit. Like, Claudia loves it. Louis, however, he seems sick to his stomach about everything, because it's cruel, basically. Like, you're toying with your food. Stop it, it's mean. However, Louis wants to please Claudia, and Claudia wants to go backstage. So after the show, they go backstage, go meet all the vampires here. And this is where, like, a lot of differences happen between the book and the show, because in the book, the Théâtre actually employs a lot of humans. They have regular human employees because, you know, vampires are shit during the daylight. What are they gonna do? And also, it's just really convenient to have fresh blood around, because the humans know these people are vampires and they are a-okay with it. They just want to be bitten. These are willing meals, and they don't kill the humans. Actually, they treat them quite nicely because, you know, they respect their food. So really the first time Louis ever sees like feeding without killing, and Louis is like, this is an opportunity. However, in the show, there is not a human present, all vampires all the time. And Louis and Claudia get there, they kind of meet the whole troupe, and it's actually, they welcome him in. They're like, hey, American buddies, come hang out with us. They're very nice. Things get perhaps a little tense when Claudia happens to see a portrait on the wall of this handsome man. Guess who it is, everybody? Oh, it's Lestat, because he is one of the co-founders of the Théâtre des Vampires. You know, it's one of those, of all the gin joints and all the towns in all the world, he had to walk into Lestat's kind of a deal. And it is true, Lestat was a founder of the Théâtre des Vampires. However, I saw the preview for next week and they're going to deep dive into the history then, so we'll talk about it next week. Right now, we're not going to worry about it. But it's true, he was one of the founders. So Louis and Claudia need to figure out what they're going to do next. And Claudia is so excited. She's just like, oh my gosh, I met so many vampires who were proud of being vampires just like me. I'm obsessed with them. I need this. And Louis still kind of his sad sack of denial phase. However, he does make a good point, you know, they murdered Lestat. It's probably not going to sit well with the theater because they all know him. And this isn't necessarily a problem for Claudia because she's very good at two things. One, keeping her mouth shut. And two, keeping her mind shut. She can block people from reading her mind. She is very good at vampire shit. Louis, however, he is a shitty vampire. Just the shittiest vampire. He never bothers to like learn a new skill or develop the skills he already has, because frankly, Lestat made him, and Lestat is a super powerful vampire. Like, Louis should be way more powerful than he is, and he's just wasting it. And besides the fact that Louis is a shitty vampire, and, you know, he's probably gonna let this slip, he also really just needs to know for himself, is Lestat dead? Is he gonna come after me? Because, you know, he's been haunted by Lestat for many years at this point. So he ends up going over to Lestat's lawyers, and like his relationship with these attorneys is actually really cool because he's like a legacy client. Once one lawyer gets really old, the next one takes over, and it's the same guy, and they pretty much know he's a vampire at this point. They know, and they know how vampires operate. Like, sometimes they're not dead, they're just sleeping for a couple decades. That's a normal vampire thing to do. So Louis like, have you heard from him? Is he dead? And he's like, I don't know. I can't declare him dead. I haven't heard from him, but I don't know if he's asleep or not. Like, I don't know, bro. Like, they're just like, meh. However, they haven't heard from Lestat for years, and they already know about Louis because, like, Lestat has, like, a will in place, essentially. So they're not going to hand over the will because they can't declare him dead, but they can give him something that Lestat left for Louis. And it's this little love letter. And the letter is just so romantic, and it really shows, like, Lestat was desperately in love with Louis. He's like, I love you more than myself. I love you more than anything. And it looks like, if you're reading this, something bad has happened to me, but I'm always on the other side of the veil trying to get back to you. It's actually really big and sweeping and romantic, which isn't how Louis sees Lestat all the time. This is Lestat being real Lestat, not the Lestat in Louis's mind. And this Lestat is being very romantic and sweet and trusts Louis above anybody else in the whole world. So it kind of points out some key details here that Louis might not have the most unbiased opinion on. But that brings us back to the present for a minute. And Louis is also kind of introspective and thinking about the past that he might have had. And he's like, why don't I remember things differently? He has one of those like self-reflection moments. However, Armand is there, and Armand starts to get a little bit aggressive, and Louis and Armand team up, and they start forming like this united front against Daniel. And they just keep like diving into his brain and like picking out painful memories and like all this stuff that like really upsets Daniel and is mean to him whenever he gets too close to sensitive information or a plot hole in Louis's memory. However, the side effect of them rifling through his head is that it really aggravates his Parkinson's. So like he can't stop shaking. It's making the Parkinson's worse because they won't get out of his fucking head. And also them rifling around his head also shakes out other repressed memories that he has of Armand in the past when he first met Louis. Like, what other memories are they gonna shake loose out of his consciousness? I don't know. It's heavily foreshadowing that these memories may have been altered and or repressed on purpose. But let's finish up our little romp with the Théâtre des Vampires in the past. The Théâtre invites Louis and Claudia along for a hunt. And it's a full rebel without a cause kind of a vibe, okay? They just have wild motorcycle rides and just sexy adventures. And the show vampires are way sexier than the book vampires. They oftentimes refer to sex in the books as like the pale shadow of killing, because like drinking all the blood out of someone's body is a lot more intimate than just having sex with them. So they just don't. They just don't have sex. I don't know if it's like a functional problem. But I don't know. They just don't have sex in the books, but they have a lot of sex in the show. But enough about the sex. Let's get back to all the murder for a second here, because they arrive at like a fancy house party and it's being thrown by some people who are like bad guys. And it's important that they put that in there, because in the books, the vampires always tend to go after like bad people. They go for bad guys. I mean, I'm not saying they don't kill innocent people too, but like mainly they eat bad guys. Like 95% of the time, bad guys. 5% whoopsies. So it's one of those situations. And I like to point that out because like to Louis, he thinks they're just indiscriminate killing machines. And like, no, they picked that house on purpose. It's full of bad people. So the troupe all descends upon the party, and this leads to like almost cartoonish levels of violence just in the background of this really kind of soft flirtatious moment between Louis and Armand. So it's a fun scene. It's just like blood splatters and like kissy romance at the same time. I'm gonna put a little book side note in here because I think it's important, because in the show they kind of show Louis pursuing Armand a bit, and in the book it was actually the opposite. Armand, he's about 400-ish years old when he meets Louis, and it wasn't like a big meet cute where they just kind of both fall in love with each other. It was not that at all. Louis was frankly repulsed by Armand and like all of his casual vampireness. However, Armand wants Louis really bad, so he keeps pursuing him. And at this period of time in Armand's life, he was kind of like he was like a boomer essentially, and he's like, Louis, I need you to be my companion because you're going to help me fit into the 20th century, baby. Like, that's how he feels about him. And Armand usually gets what Armand wants because he doesn't have any pesky feelings like empathy to worry about. He'll stop at nothing to get what he wants. And right now, what he wants is Louis. And that's pretty much where the episode ends. So not a ton of stuff happened in this episode, but a lot of foreshadowing went down. A lot of like murky feelings, kind of like something's wrong here, but you can't put your finger on it. So this was more of like a vibes episode. However, the whole Théâtre des Vampires stuff, oh, it was so fun to watch. It's just juicy storytelling, and it's just Santiago, chef's kiss. He's just great to watch. I can't stop watching him. So captivating. So on that note, I've been trying not to make predictions about where things are going, but I'm gonna make a prediction just so it's here for posterity. Here's what I think is gonna happen at the end of the season. I think Louis is gonna end up leaving Armand to go figure out who he is all on his own. And then what Armand does after that is kind of up for debate, really, because I think he'll probably turn on Daniel and be like, hey, you're my new companion now, and then he turns him into a vampire. That's what I think is gonna happen, because that's kind of what happens in the books. But the show could go completely different directions. So who knows? But like, I think it might go there. So we'll find out if I'm right later on. Anyway, let me know in the comments down below. What are you most excited to see this season? What predictions do you have? Or what was your favorite part of this episode? Let me know in the comments down below. If you like this video, make sure you give it a like. If you want to see more videos, make sure you subscribe. And if you want cool exclusive content, including early access to videos and a book club, you can consider becoming a channel member or a patron. Links for that are in the description down below. And on that note, I'll see you guys soon. Goodbye.